All right, I think I'm live here, but I'll wait a few moments to make sure that's working. Over and look at the YouTube side. I was thinking of streaming on X on Twitter, but I couldn't quite figure out how to make that happen. I think it might have to be on your phone. All right, it looks like I'm live on YouTube. I'll once it's done, I'll copy it over to X and Facebook and Rumble as well. If you're not following the Gem State Chronicle, then get to it. Follow me personally on Twitter at Gem State Brian. Follow the Gem State Chronicle on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble. I even have a TikTok page where I post daily minutes and occasional clips from other longer videos. Earlier this year, in March and April and May, I conducted a series of interviews with legislative candidates, Republican candidates for the Idaho legislative primaries. I've still got those. I'm going to be re-upping those for the winners so that you can get to know some of your new representatives and senators, as well as some of your older ones who are returning for new terms. So I just wanted to take a few minutes today and go over some of the legislative races. I wasn't sure this was really worth a full article because most people, you can just go to the website and look yourself, but I'll add my commentary if you find that useful. First, I want to say this: the new Secretary of State's website is actually pretty cool. The voteidaho.gov. It's the results dashboard is very cool. You can switch between any of these things. You want to see how county results, go to Ada County. Brings all these. This is actually the old website, so they don't have the new one for just the county stuff. Can do, see how the presidential race turned out. Donald Trump won Idaho as expected with more than a 2-to-1 ratio, so that's good. We are a solidly red state, and I'm happy to keep it that way. Trump won every county except for 2. Blaine County, which is where Sun Valley is. That's where all the rich liberals live. Kamala Harris took that with 65%. And then Teton County, which is right across the border from Jackson, Wyoming. Again, another gathering spot for rich liberals, as Trump did not lose that one by much, only 400 votes. But of course, through the rest of the state, even Ada County, which has a reputation for being somewhat blue because of the presence of Boise, Trump solidly won with more than 10% of the vote. Just a reminder to everybody out there, Ada County is more than just Boise. It is Eagle and Meridian and Kuna and Star and a lot of unincorporated areas. So you go into downtown Boise and you feel like you're in Portland, but you step a few blocks away and you're back into red Idaho. Hope everyone's doing well. It's I've caught up on sleep after staying up late for the election night watch party on Tuesday night. Still feels a bit surreal though. Every morning for the last year, I've woken up thinking, okay, what's is Trump going to win this? What does our country look like after the election? What do I have to do today to fight Proposition 1 and save Idaho's elections? What about our legislative races? How are those going to turn out? Just that's always running through my mind. And so the last couple of mornings I've woken up and found, wait a second, it's done. Trump is the president-elect. Proposition 1 was destroyed in Idaho. In case you didn't see my article today, it was a post-mortem of Prop 1, looking back at how it came about and how the opposition against it mobilized. I've never seen the Idaho Republican Party so unified, and that's fun. It's great. It's good to find an issue on which we can all work together. There are very few issues in which you will find Dorothy Moon, Tom Luna, Brad Little, Raul Labrador, and so many other people all on the same page, and so that's good. And I'm under no illusions that unity is going to continue into the legislative session. We've got a lot of big important issues that we need to take care of, DEI and continuing to fight the transgender agenda, continuing to provide safety for our children and our families, trying to get some tax cuts, figure out what to do with property taxes, and seeing if we can get income and sales taxes lower. Also cutting spending, that's hugely important. We need to reduce the size and scope of government. So these are all school choice. That's another huge issue that's coming up this year. These are all things we're going to start now debating and fighting over. But maybe, just maybe, the unity that we found within the party because of Prop 1, maybe that will extend to these other things, at least to give us a place where we can calmly and rationally discuss issues rather than just throwing bombs all day. Hopefully. Also, as I said in my piece today, if the next initiative that comes up, maybe it's going to be about abortion. We now have a network and a united front that we can tap into to fight this as well. So let's look at the legislature. Just to put talk about the big picture. Going with the last legislature, the 67th Idaho legislature, had 87 Republicans and 18 Democrats. The House had 59 Republicans and 11 Democrats. The Senate had 28 Republicans and 7 Democrats. Republicans ended up capturing 3 seats, 2 in the House, 1 in the Senate. So that majority is greater. The legislature is now 87? Let's bring the calculator. I'll put it on the screen so you can see it. Let's see. That's 90 divided by 105. 85.7% Republican. That's massive. A supermajority, to like override a governor's veto, for example, is 67%. So this is a one-party state. But what that means is that the ideological battles, the battles over policy, will take place within the Republican Party. The Democrats are almost a non-entity, except for two senators, Senator Ruckty out in Pocatello and Senator Taylor out in Sun Valley, Blaine County. Idaho Democrats are confined to Boise. The entire Idaho Democratic Party is, outside of those 2 senators, is now essentially a one-city party. They represent a few square miles of land in the capital city, whereas the rest of the state, from the Panhandle to even Moscow and the college, University of Idaho town, down to the southwest, over to the southeast, the south central, Twin Falls area, Idaho Falls, Bonneville County, it's all Republican. But that means that the debates will be within the Republican Party. School choice is happening. What form that'll take, how big it is, how expansive, that's where the debate is. Taxes, how much can we lower them? I know grocery tax is going to be a huge issue. That's, Republicans are going to be divided on that. Spending, how far can we cut spending? How much can we actually reduce the size of government? Republicans are going to be divided on that. And so we need to get out there and, debate these issues. We want a conservative, small government, maximalist liberty perspective to win the day. And I think it can, but it's going to come from persuasion and, yes, a little bit of compromise. It's not going to come from picking the most extreme position and then not budging at all. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but it's relevant to how the legislature works. I don't think you're going to win by picking a position and then not budging. Because with anything, with any negotiation, whether you're buying a used car or you're drafting a constitution for a nation, you start here, and then that sets the tone for the debate. The other side starts here, and then you find something in the middle. And if you do it right, it's closer to your side. And that's what we want to see. We want to see things as close to the conservative side as possible. But if you start here and don't move, then this side, it's, they're willing to come this far, they're not going to come that far. Eventually, you're going to pull a few people over here, and you're going to end up over there. And so it's a question of how, where is that going to land? And hopefully we see it land as close to the conservative position as possible. That's why I appreciate all the people who are on the front lines, the tip of the spear in the ideological battles out there, the bomb throwers, because they're establishing this is our position, but then we've got to have room to agree to maybe come a little bit over. So District 1, solidly Republican. Not necessarily conservative. Jim Woodward was able to rally a lot of Democrats in the primary to defeat Scott Herndon in their rematch. Herndon, of course, won 2 years ago by rallying conservatives. And it'll be interesting to see what this district looks like in the future. Sandpoint is a fairly blue city. So Woodward was in no danger of losing his election. But it does call into question now what the actual ideological demographics of that district is. Mark Sauter, again, he defeated 2 conservative challengers, Jane Sauter and Spencer Hutchings, and solid win there. Cornell Razor is, he's probably the most conservative of the 3. I mean, it's not even probably, he is. So I'm pleased to see him solidly win there as well. He had the most opposition, which tells me this is basically the Democratic floor. Although it makes you wonder, out of all these voters, let's, in the next primary, we'll see where they land. District 2, no surprises here. Phil Hart, Heather Scott, Dale Hawkins. This might be the most conservative district in Idaho. Maybe a little bit more conservative than my own District 14, but not much. Doug Okonowitz, Vita Barbieri, Jordan Redmond, another solid set of candidates. Jordan Redmond, he brought a bill last year to reform Medicaid expansion, and it failed in committee. The Democrats mobilized hundreds of people to testify to say, if you pass this bill, which establishes work requirements and things and guardrails for the program, if you pass this bill, we're going to die. So we're going to see something like that again this year, and hopefully we have more strength in the Republican cause and the conservative cause to stand up to that kind of propaganda. District 4, again, solidly conservative. Ben Taves, Joe Alfieri, Elaine Price. All good folks up there. District 5, Carl Bierke, Ron Mendive, Antoni Wisniewski. Again, solid victories. This is the areas up around Kootenai County. Wisniewski's opponent, Teresa Borenpaul, was gained notoriety for allegedly pulling a fire alarm during a meeting of the North Idaho College back in the day, trying to disrupt the meeting. So if that's the best the Democrats have to offer, then yeah. Bob Nannini, who's a former Republican, I would say a moderate Republican, he ran as an independent, and even combined with the Democrat, they were not able to get anywhere near Ron Mendive. District 6 was a tough one. This is where this includes Moscow, which is the college town of University of Idaho. And the Democrats threw a lot at Dan Foreman. He's one of the most solidly conservative senators in Idaho. But he's, I'd say he's a bit of a loose cannon. He says what's on his mind. He has no filter. Democrats and their friends in the media alleged that he said a slur against Lori McCann's opponent, Trish Carter Goodhart, who's a Native American of the Nez Perce tribe. He denies it. There's no video or audio of the event. So it's, he said, she said. But of course, whenever you have a he said, she said moment that goes against a Republican, the media is going to report it uncritically, which they did. But Foreman held on. He took their biggest shot, and he survived. He won a very close race 2 years ago, so he actually expanded on his victory. Lori McCann survived a primary challenge. Had there been one conservative challenger, she likely would have lost. Colton Bennett ran a fantastic campaign, but Dave Dalby was similar on the issues, and so it split the vote. And Lori McCann survived, and then she wins re-election. Brandon Mitchell, he does a lot of good election integrity bills. He also won a solid victory as well. So Republicans running the table so far. Coming down to District 7, Cindy Carlson, Kyle Harris, and Charlie Shepard, all solid victories. Kyle Harris was the hand-picked successor for Representative Mike Kingsley, a good guy. He survived a very close primary challenge from Jim Schmelik, but then he wins handily here, so that's good to see. He's the good Harris that was on the ballot compared to our Democrat presidential candidate. Charlie Shepard survived a primary challenge as well, and is wins handily. So we'll see his fun suits and blazers in the House chamber again this year. District 8, this is the one where conservatives just flipped the table during the primary. Last session, you had Representative Megan Blanksma, Representative Matt Bundy, and Senator Jeff Schroeder. Two of the three of them, Bundy and Schroeder, voted against House Bill 72, which prohibited genital mutilation surgery for minors. Meanwhile, Megan Blanksma, she ended up on the wrong side of a power struggle over the new budgets and House leadership, and ended up ousted from her majority leader position. And then all three of them were knocked out in the primary, and so there was no surprise as to the eventual result. Christy Zitto, one of our most conservative senators from years past, will return to the Senate, along with newcomers Rob Beiswinger and Faye Thompson. Rob Beiswinger has a little bit of experience in the House. Two sessions ago, he substituted for Dorothy Moon when she was in the legislature, so this is her seat that he's now taking over. District 9, out here in southwestern Idaho, excuse me. Abby Lee had this Senate seat. She decided late in the session to not run for re-election, and then she eventually moved out of the state entirely, taking a job with Oregon's community college system. So Shippey won the primary against former Representative Scott Syme, who I would consider to be a liberal Republican. And then the governor appointed him to fill out Lee's term, and now he's won election in his own right, which is fantastic. In the House seats, Judy Boyle was unopposed in the primary. Fellow guy I know, Greg Diakogiannis, ran a write-in campaign against her. He wanted to present a conservative alternative, and he is, as far as I know, intending to run in the primary in 2 years. Meanwhile, John Schertz took out Representative Jason Gallagher, one of our solid conservatives. So that's a shame, but he will be there, and we'll see what he does. Notice these margins, 81%, 85%. The Democrats made a point this year of running somebody in every district. They wanted to get the news media coverage saying that they were competing everywhere. And really, this is the result. I mean, I guess kudos to them for showing up and stepping up to the plate and stepping into the arena. I'll never complain about people doing that. But at the same time, 85% to 15%. It's sometimes you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. A lot of these Democrats didn't even campaign. They just put their names on the ballot and then sat back and relaxed. So, District 10, another one. This one may be close to 2 and 14 as a solidly conservative district. Obviously, Tammy Nichols, she survived. She didn't just survive a primary challenge; she crushed her liberal Republican opponent. Mike Moyle defeated Rachel Haislip in the primary and for a second time, and Bruce Skog was unopposed in the primary, and he's got a Democrat opponent. But again, none of the Democrats broke 20% in District 10. This is Starr and Middleton, and it is, it's very conservative. District 11 is Caldwell. Camille Blaylock, who's the daughter of former Idaho GOP chair and state superintendent Tom Luna, won a primary against Chris Trakel. It was fairly close. And then for the representative seats, you had Kent Marmon defeated Representative Julie Yamamoto, and Lucas Kaler was filling an open seat. Chris Allgood is also on the Caldwell City Council. He decided not to run again, so it opened up a seat. Kaler defeated Sarah Cheney, the wife of former Representative Greg Cheney, another moderate to liberal Republican, in a very close race. But all three of them held on 65% or more. This is the one where the Democrats tried to switch their candidates. They tried to take Tony Farrow out of the Senate race and put her in the House race to run against Kent Marmon, and then take Anthony Porto out of the House race and run him against Camille Blaylock. And then the candidates notice, wait a second, this is illegal. And that's still a point of contention right now between Republicans in District 11 and the Secretary of State, who initially allowed this to happen despite the fact that it was illegal and only reversed it when they were called on it. So we'll see what happens with that. I introduced a resolution to my committee, the District 14 Republicans, that supports a law change to not allow candidate withdrawals after the primary, unless you die or move out, obviously. And I think that's necessary because what the Democrats have been doing lately is saying that primary elections are optional. They did it 2 years ago in the Attorney General's race. They put up a fellow named Steve Scanlon in an unopposed Democrat primary, but once it turned out that Raul Labrador won the Republican primary instead of the incumbent Lawrence Wasden, who I think they found acceptable, they decided to switch. They kicked Scanlon off the ballot. He withdrew for personal reasons, and then they brought up Tom Arkush, who was, at least had the veneer of being an independent, trying to capture some moderate Republican votes. Thankfully, it failed. Look at the presidential election this year. They kicked Joe Biden off the ballot after he had won a mostly uncontested Democratic primary and put on Kamala Harris, who had not won a primary. In fact, she didn't even compete in the 2020 primary. She dropped out before the first Iowa caucus. But they decided that this was what they were going to do. They were going to save democracy by completely eliminating the need for a primary. Idaho's Democrat delegates, they gleefully signed on to support Kamala Harris at the convention, even though they did not have a competitive primary. And we saw this week the result. Messing around with elections and playing games with it usually doesn't succeed. So we see the same thing here. Tony Farrow and Anthony Porto, they could not break 35%. So I think we need a change of the law, and we'll see how that happens, see how that goes through the process in the next few months. District 12, a solidly Republican district. Ben Adams unopposed, Jeff Cornell's unopposed, Jaron Crane had token opposition. District 13, also in Nampa. District 13 might give District 2 and some of the others a run for their money as the most conservative, because look who's here. Got Brian Lenny, who defeated former Senator Jeff Agenbrod in a rematch. Lenny initially defeated Agenbrod in the primary in 2022. Agenbrod came back for a rematch and got beat again. And Lenny wins with 70%. And then Brent Crane, solid guy, and Steve Tanner, who took out Kenny Roten, a moderate to liberal Republican. So District 13 is all of a sudden a rock star district. And District 14 is my own district, so allow me to feel a little bit of bias here. C. Scott Grow, he has been the chairman of JFAC these last 2 years, the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee. He is in the running for president pro tempore of the Senate because Chuck Winder lost his primary. He says he wants to gain the leadership position so he can protect the new budget process that he shepherded through last year. And we'll see how that goes. He's trying to set himself up as the compromise candidate between a conservative candidate and the more moderate candidate. And I don't know how it'll play out. Ted Hill wins re-election unopposed. Josh Tanner wins re-election essentially unopposed. I met Joe Daley at a street fair up in Emmett last month. Nice lady. We had a pleasant conversation, but I think she's one of those that just put their names on the ballot so that they could say they contested every district. I did not see a single campaign sign. I'm not even sure she raised any money. But that's 14. Now we get to our first, well, I guess second with 6, but this is really our first swing district, battleground district. Cody Galloway, 2 years ago, as a freshman legislator, she'd been elected to the House, and then she decided to run for Senate in the primary, and she challenged Senator Fred Martin. And he was a longtime Republican senator. He was the chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee, very powerful. And she really made some enemies in doing this. And I will be forever grateful to her for doing this, for having the courage to challenge a very powerful old guard Republican. And she won. She beat him in the primary. Fred Martin. See, we always have this debate. Should Republican elected officials and candidates and officers of the party, how far do they have to go to support Republicans? And what I often hear is that Republican officers should support the Republican nominees, the people that the Republican voters have said these are our champions. You saw this 2 years ago when Ammon Bundy was running an independent campaign for governor. A lot of conservatives supported him. You saw this this year in Ada County, where Doug Traubel was running on the Constitution Party ticket against Sheriff Matt Clifford. And we have this debate. Should Republican committees and Republican officers support the Republican nominees, even if they don't think that they're conservative enough? Well, this was the opposite. Fred Martin, instead of getting behind his party's nominee, it takes a lot of swallowing of your pride to support the person who beat you. But I think it is part of the process. It's necessary. You go into the primary, which is your party's decision as to who will represent you, your party, in the general election. One person's going to win and one or more will lose. And that's just the way it goes. And I think it's fair and right that you support your party's nominee, because that's what you would expect them to do. If Fred Martin had won that election, I'm sure he would expect Cody Galloway to get in line and, if not, actively campaign for him, at least, support him in word. I know, Chris Trakel, he is the chairman of the Canyon County Republican Central Committee. He was beaten in the primary by Camille Blaylock, but he, as the chairman of the committee, is going to support his nominee, and, kudos to him. Fred Martin did not have that kind of humility. He endorsed the Democrat. He endorsed Rick Just against Cody Galloway. He endorsed a Democrat to win his seat. And I find that awful. Fred Martin also went on to endorse Tom Arkush against Raul Labrador, so it really shows you what party loyalty means to him. Now, obviously, people say principles before party, people before party, and that's fine. But I do believe that there's a certain level of loyalty that you should exhibit when you are in a party position, as an elected official, or in my case, as a district chairman. So, Anyway, all that is to say, Cody Galloway came about 300 votes short 2 years ago. Rick Just beat her by 300 odd votes. A Constitution Party candidate, Sarah Clendenon, got 400 votes, which is still irritating. Because who's going to be better if you're a Constitution Party sort? Cody Galloway, the person who took out Fred Martin, or Rick Just, the Democrat? Anyway, can put all that behind us now because, as you can see on the screen, this way, Cody Galloway did win the rematch and by almost 1,000 votes. So that is a solid victory. Annette Tipton came in as a newcomer and ran against Steve Birch. Steve Birch makes his reputation, makes his name as a door knocker. He goes out and knocks every door in the district over and over and over throughout the year, even in the off years. And even so, Annette Tipton came within 227 votes of beating him. In fact, she was leading on election night. When I went to bed at 2 a.m., she was still ahead, but the last batch of votes came in while I was asleep, and I woke up and she had lost. I find it a bummer. I've gotten to know her a little bit. She's, very nice, intelligent, a happy warrior, nice family, but she came up just short. So we are unfortunately stuck with Steve Birch another 2 years, but we will get him next time. Meanwhile, Dory Healy, who won Cody Galloway's House seat 2 years ago, held on for a pretty solid victory against Sherry Baber. So this District 15, it's on the very western edge of Boise. It's on the Boise side of Eagle Road. It's been a purple district for a while. Last session, it was 2 Democrats and a Republican. Now it's going to be 2 Republicans and a Democrat. And I'm excited about that, just if nothing else, for the psychological value of saying, no, we are taking back territory. Democrats are not just going to keep expanding and expanding and expanding. No, we are going to push you back. We are going to start taking ground in Boise. We're going to win this city back, precinct by precinct, district by district, house by house. We can do this. When we get to District 17, I'll show you a little more good news. 16, this is a solidly Democrat district. This is Garden City and kind of following the Boise River. Ali Rabi beat Doug Rich, not by as much as it was 2 years ago. Sonia Galaviz against Chandler Hadraba, and Todd Achilles against Jackie Davidson. 2 years ago, almost every one of these races was at least 60-40. So seeing Doug Rich chipping into that a little bit, Jackie Davidson gets over 40%. That's a good sign. And then District 17, I think, is where the most good signs. You have Benjamin Chaffetz in his rematch against Kerry Selmaroth. He improves on his 2022 numbers. And then Jazz Alexis, who's a newcomer. He's a legislative staffer who decided to run for office. He comes within 14% or within 15% of winning this open seat. It's kind of open. Megan Egbert, I believe, was appointed to fill out Sue Chu's term, who unfortunately passed away. But this is a good sign. It shows, I think, that there is room in Boise to start taking back ground, just like in District 15. In District 17, if say you come in next year with some really great candidates, I think Chaffetz and Alexis were good, but come in with them or someone else, whatever, but give them some money and give them some volunteers and give them some really slick campaign signs and materials and resources. Maybe we can steal one in 17 in 2 years. Obviously, the map is going to look different in 2026. It's this year was a red wave year, for sure, and that lifts all Republicans. 2 years from now, it might be a blue wave because it's going to be a reaction against whatever we're going to do in the next 2 years, and that's normal. Midterms are usually a kind of a clap back to the incumbent party. But we're also going to have governor candidates on the ballot, statewide candidates, attorney general. So it'll be interesting. We'll see what it looks like. 18, very solidly Democrat. We only had one Republican running, got less than 40%. 19, this is the North End. Also, it includes the stuff north of Boise, like Dry Creek and Hidden Springs and Avamore. And those places are growing. I could see in a couple of years District 19 being competitive. It doesn't look like it now, if you just look at the numbers, because there's a lot of liberals in Boise's North End. But there's going to be a lot of conservatives over the next few years moving into Avamore and Hidden Springs and Dry Creek. So we'll see what happens. District 20, we're back in Republican land. This is Meridian. Josh Kaiser, of course, defeated Chuck Winder, the Senate pro tem, in the primary, and he wins easily here. Joe Palmer and James Holtzclaw will also return. District 21, this is down Central Meridian. Treg Berndt had a Libertarian challenger who performed fairly well for a Libertarian. That might be the best Libertarian performance of in the state. Treg Berndt has a bit of a reputation as more of a moderate. He voted against House Bill 71, protecting children from child gender mutilation, and that rubbed people along a wrong way. However, he solidly won his primary, so obviously he's got the confidence of his voters. Same thing with James Petsky and Jeff Ehlers. Solid wins there. 22, South Meridian, Lori Den Hartog and John Vander Woude and Jason Monks will all be returning, all with about 66 to 33. District 23, this is going down south, Kuna, Owyhee County. It's got a little bit of Canyon County and Ada County as well. Todd Lakey's solid. Chris Bruce, he defeated Melissa Durant in the primary, so he's another conservative coming in. On the other hand, it turned out to be a wash. Sean Dygert's, looks to be more of a moderate. He defeated Tina Lambert. So, we get Bruce but lose Lambert, and we'll see how it goes. Sean Dygert's, he built his campaign around agriculture. I believe that's actually his profession. He's an ag teacher. So we'll see what he does in the legislature. 24, the areas around Twin Falls. Not Twin Falls directly, that's 25. Glenita Zeiderfeld, Clint Hostetler, part of the Magic Valley Miracle, the set of 4 conservatives who just crushed the liberal Republicans in the primary. Zeiderfeld holds on solid victory over the Democrat, and Hostetler and Steve Miller were not opposed. And then District 5, which is Twin Falls, Josh Cole defeated Linda Hartgen, a liberal Republican senator, and he didn't just defeat her, he crushed her. And then he was unopposed because the Democrats weren't going to bother running anyone against Hartgen because she was acceptable to them. That's my theory. Lance Clow, a longtime representative, is in there. And then David Levitt, he defeated Greg Lanting, and he was also unopposed, again, for probably the same reason. Linda Hartgen and Greg Lanting were the only 2 Republican elected officials to come out in favor of Proposition 1, probably because they were sore losers. District 26, we're now in Blaine County, Jerome County, and Lincoln County. This is another swing district. Jack Nelson, we'll start at the bottom here. Jack Nelson won his election last time. It was very close. I believe it took a recount to confirm it. But he handily wins here by looks like about 600 votes. Okay, so it's not handily. It's reasonably close. Blaine County has a lot of liberals, so that's where all the Democrat votes here are coming from. When the initial returns came in from just Jerome and Lincoln counties, all 3 Republicans were solidly winning here. In fact, Kayla Tate, the independent in the Senate race, was running ahead of Ron Taylor. However, once Blaine County reported, then that was all she wrote because there are so many liberals there. However, in the case of Jack Nelson and now newcomer Mike Pohanka, they were able to hold on. Pohanka, I met him a couple of years ago at the Twin Falls Republican Convention. Nice guy. I don't know much about him, but he defeats the incumbent Democrat, Ned Burns, so kudos to him. And then you had the District 26 Senate race, and this was one of those controversial ones because you had incumbent Ron Taylor and then Republican Lori Likely. This is a rematch from 2 years ago. Likely had been in the House, and she wanted to flip to the Senate, but Ron Taylor held on. And so she was preparing for this rematch. Suffice it to say, a lot of conservatives are not fond of Lori Likely. And to be honest, I am not shedding any tears that she won't be in the Senate next year. She's one of the farthest left Republicans in the state. Her voting record in the House shows that. Her rhetoric shows that. She wrote a scathing editorial recently about Dorothy Moon. And whether or not she supported Prop 1, my gut says she probably did. So Kayla Tate ran as an independent. And it's kind of out in the open now, so I'll share what I've known, that conservative committees like Idaho Freedom PAC went to the mat for Kayla Tate. They wanted to make sure that a liberal Republican like Lori Likely did not make it into the Senate, and in that they succeeded. Whereas Nelson and Pohanka won, Ron Taylor holds onto his seat with a less than majority because Kayla Tate pulled enough conservative votes, mostly in Jerome and Lincoln counties. This one actually, went to bed on election night and likely was still winning, but Blaine County still had not reported all its votes. And once they came in, they put Ron Taylor over the top. So that's the calculus. Again, as a Republican district chair, I didn't say much about this race. It's up to the voters to decide, and I'm not going to come out against a Republican nominee. However, from a conservative perspective, it makes a lot of sense, especially in essentially a one-party state like Idaho, that you'd rather, in a district like this, with a candidate like this, you'd rather have a Democrat than a liberal Republican, because the liberal Republican is going to vote for the more moderate candidates for leadership. The liberal Republican is going to be on committees. The liberal Republican is going to be part of the Republican caucus pushing legislation. Whereas the Democrat, you know where he stands. He's a Democrat. He's not going to be voting for Republican leadership. He's not going to have a possibility of having a committee chairmanship. He might be able to work with Republicans on legislation, but it's going to be a much tougher sell than with a liberal Republican. So that's the calculus, and that's how it turned out. District 27, speaking of moderate Republican candidates for leadership, Kelly Anthem was unopposed. Doug Pickett solidly won his race. It looks like Damian Rodriguez was just the Democrat sacrificial lamb to say that they competed in District 27, and Clay Handy was unopposed as well. District 28, Jim Guthrie, the chair of Senate State Affairs. Hopefully that won't be the case again. He put the kibosh on a lot of conservative bills, even ones that came from the House having passed with overwhelming margins. But he returns with a solid win. Rick Cheatham, Dan Garner. District 29, this is Pocatello. This one is the fourth of the 4 swing districts that I suggested would be would possibly swing either way. And the red wave, the red tide, lifted almost all Republicans, except for Lori Likely. Dustin Manwaring, he's the Republican caucus chair. He faced a tough battle. Mary Shea, I believe she's an ACLU lawyer. She substituted for Senator Ruckty a few times this year, and I didn't want to see her in the Senate, or in the House in this case. She's one of those who's smart and scary and on the wrong side. So I was hoping Manwaring would pull this off, and he did fairly solidly. But newcomer Tanya Burcoyne also defeated Nate Roberts, the incumbent Democrat. So that's the 3rd seat that the Republicans took. Cody Galloway beat Rick Just. Mike Pohanka beat Ned Burns, and Tanya Burgoyne beat Nate Roberts. So 3 Democrats are ousted. And then the rest is nothing out of the ordinary here. Julie Van Orden, David Cannon, and Ben Firemont. Firemont defeated Julianne Young by only 2 votes in the primary, and that came after Young Americans for Liberty sent mailers falsely accusing her of voting certain ways on bills to protect children. Still is extremely irritating. She's one of the strongest advocates for families and children in the Idaho legislature. So to see her defeated in that way was a gut punch. But now we have Ben Firemont, who he's been in opposition to Dorothy Moon and Idaho GOP leadership. He was one of the architects of the fight between Bingham County and the state party when the Bingham County GOP attempted to ignore its own bylaws and state party rules in the way it elected a new chairman. Instead of the chairman resigning, the vice chair calling a special meeting, and then them electing a new chair, the chairman resigned effective a certain date and then called his own meeting to elect a replacement. And that is against party rules. So following party rules, Chairwoman Moon called a new meeting to do it right, and they ignored her. And in fact, went to court with Greg Cheney representing them. Yeah, all you had to do was follow the rules, guys. Anyway, so he's going to be in there. District 31, Van Burton Shaw, Gerald Raymond, Rod Furness are all returning. Rod Furness had a tough fight against Kerry Hanks, a conservative from southeast Idaho, or well, it's not really southeast, it's kind of up. But anyway, she came just short. But these are Republican areas. Kevin Cook, Stephanie Mickelson, Wendy Horman, Dave Lent, Barb Ehart, and Marco Erickson. This was Democrats, a lot of national Democrats put money and resources into trying to take out Barb Ehart. She was the architect of the Protecting Women's Sports Act that Brad Little signed a couple of years ago. And she's been on national tours to speak to state legislatures about protecting women's sports from men who identify as women. And so she's gotten a lot of national attention, and the left and the LGBTQ plus lobby has thrown a lot at her, but she's still held on for a 5,000 vote win. So again, that shows that, at least as far as this issue is concerned, Republicans are pretty unified, even those in eastern Idaho that we might consider to be more moderate. Doug Ricks, John Weber, Britt Raybould, Mark Harris, Kevin Andrus, and Josh Wheeler. One interesting thing about these regions, districts 33, 34, 35, is that I saw a map, I don't have it up right now, showing, little arrows in every county. Red arrows showing them that moved more toward Trump in the last 4 years, and blue arrows showing how they moved toward Harris from where Biden was 4 years ago. Northern Utah and southeastern Idaho are shifting blue when it comes to the presidential vote, apparently. We can probably look at this. Yeah, 87%. So, okay, it's not that much of a shift then. There we go. Bannock County, 60%. That's got Pocatello. Oneida County is 86%. Power County, 70%. So still pretty solid. But I guess it's just, Bonneville County, 71%. It's not that they're turning blue. It's that the margins are shrinking a bit. More people voted Democrat for president in these areas than they did 4 years ago. So they're still solidly red. I don't want to imply that they're not. But it is something, it is a demographic thing that I think we need to keep our eyes on and see what might be going on over there. From a ideological perspective, I've long said that Eastern Idaho is a tough nut to crack. It's difficult to figure out exactly where they're coming from. Why is there such a difference between Republicans in southeastern Idaho and Republicans in North Idaho? What's the division here? And that's something when I did my candidate interviews, I was starting to really notice that there is a geographical difference. You had conservative Republicans in southeast Idaho who ran as if they were North Idaho Republicans, and they got slaughtered. But then you had moderate Republicans in North Idaho who ran as if they were in eastern Idaho, and they got slaughtered. So there really is a geographical, ideological split here. And I think it's going to take a little more study to figure out why and what it means going forward. But yeah, that is the legislature. It's a very high turnout. Total for the state, 85.7% of registered voters turned out. It's great news. The more people who participate in our representative republic, I think the better it'll be, especially if they take the time to get educated on the issues. There was a lot of worry that Prop 1 was going to really grab people who are not really educated on the issues, the ones who are not plugged in 24/7 like I am. But no, Idahoans came out and soundly rejected it, and that is amazing. So, as I said, the legislature is set. We've got 90 Republicans and 15 Democrats. So the battle will be within the Republican Party. Leadership elections happen in December. We'll figure out who's going to be the pro tem of the Senate, which will determine who's on committees, which will determine if we're going to get some conservative legislation passed in this coming session. So everything hinges on that. I'll be writing more about that in the future. And then the session begins in January. So there's no brakes on this train. Appreciate you joining me, and I will talk to you all later.